June 13th, 1942, Amagansett Beach, Long Island. The Atlantic wind carries the hiss of surf and diesel fumes as U-584 rises from the dark water like a ghost. Its conning tower glistens under a moon veiled by fog. 4 men emerge, slick with seawater, their boots sinking into the sand. They wear German Navy coveralls but carry American money and forged IDs. The mission is called Operation Pastorius. At the head of the group is George John Dash, 39 years old, a German-born American who once washed dishes in New York before returning to Germany. Now he's back, sent by the Abwehr, German military intelligence, to wage sabotage against the country that gave him a life. He glances toward the dunes. "Schnell," he mutters. Behind him, Ernst Berger, a former POW with perfect English, hauls a crate of explosives. The other two, Heinrich Heinck and Richard Quirin, dig frantically, burying the boxes of dynamite and timing devices in the sand before first light. From the dunes, the only sound is the rhythmic crash of waves and the metallic tick of tools. Then headlights, faint and approaching. A lone Coast Guardsman, John Cullen, patrolling the shoreline with a flashlight, steps into view. He freezes. 4 silhouettes half buried in sand, dressed in strange clothes. Dash steps forward calmly, hand in his pocket. "Evening, buddy," he says in near-perfect English. Cullen's pulse spikes. He spots something behind Dash, crates stamped with German markings. Cullen stammers that he's just on patrol. Dash steps closer, lowering his voice. "Take this and forget what you saw." He presses a wad of bills, $260, and waves him off. Cullen nods, pretending to accept the bribe, then turns and runs full speed toward the nearest Coast Guard station. Behind him, Dash curses under his breath. Too late. We're burned. By sunrise, the U-boat has vanished beneath the Atlantic. On the beach, only sand and footprints remain. But the FBI already has a name, a location, and a reason to believe Nazi agents have landed on American soil. The clock begins to tick. June 14th, 1942, 0900 hours. At the FBI's New York field office, teletypes hammer out urgent cables from Washington. The message is brief. Possible enemy agents landed Long Island coast. All field personnel mobilized. Special Agent R.J. Connolly studies a map pinned to the wall. A red circle marks Amagansett. Another pin sits in Jacksonville, Florida. Intelligence has just confirmed a second U-boat surfacing there 3 days later, landing 4 more agents with identical equipment. The 2 teams, codenamed Long Island and Florida, are meant to converge in New York City. Their orders: destroy rail lines, aluminum plants, and the hydroelectric dam at Niagara Falls. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover sees an opportunity. "We'll make an example of them," he declares. Every agent in the Bureau is ordered to search train stations, boarding houses, and docks. Across the eastern seaboard, men in dark suits blend with crowds, scanning faces for nervous eyes, foreign accents, or the smell of seawater. Meanwhile, in a cheap hotel room in Manhattan, George Dash stares at a suitcase full of American currency, $84,000 in crisp bills. His men are asleep, unaware of the turmoil inside their leader's head. He's begun to question the mission. He knows that sabotage against American civilians is suicide. He lights a cigarette, exhales slowly, and whispers to himself in English, "I will not die for Hitler." By dawn, Dash boards a train alone for Washington, D.C. Inside his briefcase, the entire plan, the code names of all 8 agents, and the address of the safe house in New York. At 1 p.m., he walks into the Mayflower Hotel and calls the FBI headquarters from the lobby phone. The operator answers. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." Dash hesitates, then says, "This is George Dash. I am one of the men you are looking for." Within hours, he's sitting across from agents who can't decide if he's insane or genuine. Dash opens the suitcase, spilling stacks of cash across the table. "I can prove it," he says. "I came to destroy America, but I have decided to save it." At that same moment, hundreds of miles away, the second team in Florida checks their watches. They're waiting for confirmation from New York that never comes. The silence from Dash's group begins to unsettle them. Then, one by one, they start to vanish, rounded up in quiet arrests orchestrated by the FBI. The operation that was supposed to bring chaos to the American mainland has lasted barely 10 days. But the drama is far from over. June 24th, 1942. Washington, D.C. A dim interrogation room inside the Department of Justice hums under fluorescent light. The air smells of ink, sweat, and stale cigarettes. On one side of the table sits George John Dash, hands folded neatly. Across from him, Assistant Director D.M. Ladd flips through a file thick with photographs, U-boats, detonators, bundles of Reichsmarks. "You're telling us you volunteered to betray your own mission?" Ladd asks. "Yes. I told the Abwehr I could do better than their fools. And I was right. They were amateurs. The plan was doomed before it began." He recounts every detail with unnerving precision. The Abwehr's training school near Berlin, the use of dynamite disguised in shaving kits, and the objectives: blast aluminum plants in Tennessee, derail troop trains near Pittsburgh, and cripple America's rail system. "Hitler believed we could terrorize your people," Dash says. He doesn't understand Americans. Within 48 hours, Ernst Berger, Dash's second-in-command, confirms everything. Berger, too, despised the Nazi regime and had planned to defect once ashore. His statement seals the fate of the others. Across the country, the FBI moves swiftly. Agents Heinrich Heinck, Richard Quirin, Edward Curling, Werner Thiel, Hermann Neubauer, and Herbert Haupt are seized in hotels and safe houses. They surrender quietly, stunned by the speed of discovery. Inside Hoover's office, triumph and tension collide. Publicly, the Bureau has foiled a massive Nazi sabotage ring. Privately, Hoover knows the real story. The case succeeded because one saboteur turned himself in. Yet he senses a propaganda victory too valuable to waste. The Bureau releases staged photographs, agents studying beach debris, secret maps, and confiscated explosives, building the myth of an omniscient FBI. In Germany, the Abwehr reels. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, its head, receives a furious call from Hitler himself. "Your agents lasted less than 2 weeks. You've humiliated the Reich." Within months, Canaris will be under suspicion, a slow downfall that ends with his execution in 1945. Meanwhile, in America, Dash and Berger are confined at a secret location, unaware of the storm gathering outside. The White House is furious. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, briefed on the case, demands swift justice. "These men came to kill Americans," he says. "They will face a military tribunal." Hoover agrees, but the Bureau's lawyers know something darker is coming, something that will test the limits of American law. and wartime fear. July 8, 1942, Washington, D.C. In the sub-basement of the Department of Justice, 8 German saboteurs stand before a panel of 7 U.S. Army generals. The chamber smells of mildew and sweat. Blackout curtains seal the windows. This is not a civilian courtroom. It's a military tribunal, authorized directly by President Roosevelt. No jury, no appeal. Only judgment. The accused wear plain suits, stripped of insignia. George Dash and Ernst Berger sit apart from the others, watched closely by armed MPs. They've cooperated with investigators, but whether that will save them is uncertain. At the head of the tribunal, Major General Myron C. Kramer calls the session to order. The charges? Espionage, sabotage, and conspiracy to commit acts of war on U.S. soil. Attorney General Francis Biddle presents the evidence: U-boat logs, photographs of buried explosives, and transcripts of Dash's confession. The courtroom listens to his voice on a recording, calm, deliberate, almost proud. "We were told the American people were lazy," he says. "We found them watchful and quick." Defense counsel argue that the men were captured before committing any act of war, but the generals remain unmoved. Across the ocean, Hitler's propaganda ministry broadcasts denials. No German soldiers operate on American soil. In Washington, the press is silent. Every journalist sworn to secrecy until the trial's conclusion. The proceedings last 3 weeks. Each morning, the accused are marched through narrow halls lined with guards who refuse to look them in the eye. On July 31st, the verdict arrives. All 8 are found guilty. The sentence? Death by electrocution. But Hoover intervenes quietly. He knows Dash and Berger's cooperation prevented nationwide panic and helped dismantle Abwehr networks. He sends a memo to the White House recommending clemency for both. President Roosevelt reads it once, nods curtly, and writes a single word in the margin: approved. 6 of the men, Curling, Quirin, Heinck, Thiel, Neubauer, and Haupt, are transferred to the district jail. On August 8, 1942, at precisely 1:04 p.m., the first switch is thrown. The executions are completed within 2 hours. The press is finally allowed to publish the story, headlined, "FBI Foils Nazi Saboteurs. 6 Executed in Washington." Dash and Berger are spared. Their sentences are commuted to 30 years and life imprisonment. Hoover makes sure their role is downplayed. The Bureau's legend must stand untarnished. In Berlin, Canaris orders a halt to all U-boat infiltration missions against America. The Reich will never again attempt to land saboteurs on U.S. soil. For Germany, Operation Pastorius is finished. For American intelligence, it marks a beginning, the birth of a professional counter-espionage machine. Years later, when Dash is released and deported to Germany, he tells a journalist, "They call me traitor, but I saved lives." He looks out a train window, eyes hollow. The sea buried the rest. The waves off Amagansett are quiet again, but beneath the sand, somewhere deep, a few wooden crates of German dynamite still lie forgotten. Relics of a failed invasion that never truly began.